Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel and I'm an Orange, and welcome to another ICONX review video. Today we are going to talk about the Templar Knight. This beautiful large knight armor model right here. Really like the look of this thing. Very big, very large model, and a little bit different than other ICONX models in that one of the big difference between this ICONX model, a lot of ICONX models, is they're taking a large monument. They many times have a smaller Middle Earth version. They make a larger version for the ICONX, and they cram in a lot of little bits and pieces and detail because with the larger model they can. This is an exception to that. This has a lot of large pieces. There's only one or two little tiny parts in here, but everything else is pretty big sized and can be fairly easily shapen with your hand. So it's a little bit of a departure in some ways from the typical ICONX model, but still it is a larger model, it's a figure model. This is reminiscent in my mind of Iron Man, and I say that mainly because it's a humanoid figure covered in armor, which is pretty much what Iron Man is. And I got Iron Man right here. Iron Man is almost as big as the Templar Knight. And Iron Man has a lot more pieces to it than the Templar Knight. It's a very similar body structure. There's some very big similarities to the way some of the things come together. The Templar Knight is not as complicated as the Iron Man is. It's a lot of bigger pieces, but it's a lot of similarly tricky connections. Iron Man was a real challenge the first time I did that, and the way some of the things are buried in other things and the way they connect, it took me several tries to get them right. Now, having that Iron Man experience building Iron Man helped with building this, though it's been a while. But a lot of the pieces are just larger and easier to work with. Now, I haven't built the Black Panther model yet, but I got a feeling that the lower leg is a similar structure to what the Black Panther had, which is in some ways an improvement. It certainly shows off that kind of calf area the way they have it designed. It's a bit weird, a bit different, but it seems to work okay. One of the big things about this model, one of the big challenges, is you've got a lot of tabs, like or a lot of sections with the knees, the elbows, and the shoulder joints, where there's several strips that are kind of connected together to create that kind of bubbled out joint look. And those tabs are a little challenging to get the slots over the tabs, and what I had to do a lot was kind of bend the tab too far inward or kind of at an odd angle, not the final shape, kind of out of shape, to get the tab over it, to get things connected, to then expand or push it or shape it back to its intended shape. So I did that little trick quite a bit with the knees, with the elbows, and with the shoulders with this particular model. Also, I've got a bunch of 3D printed tools that I've designed to help working on these models, and one tool that I haven't released on Etsy yet is a set of tapers. And one of the reasons, two main reasons that I designed some tapers was for long tapered parts. The two things that came to mind were plane bodies, aircraft bodies, a lot of them have kind of a tapered shape to them, and things like Iron Man and C-3PO, where you have long arms and leg pieces that are somewhat tapered. This was the first time that I've got a chance to use those tapered set that I printed on a body-like figure. They worked okay. They weren't perfect, but they did a lot to help shape the kind of tapered and odd shapes of the arms and leg pieces to make those shapes. It wasn't enough to just do it once around the taper piece and you've got the exact shape you want, but it got you a lot closer than using, say, a drill bit, which would get you very much off and you'd have to modify it because one end's bigger than the other. Tapered shapes that I printed got me a lot closer, but it also gave me a chance to kind of experiment with them and see if they're going to work better. But back to this model. One of the things I really enjoyed about this model, one of the things I really liked, was the way the knees and the elbows came together. You have three tabs. One tab bends inward, the other two tabs bend outward. You start with that inner tab and secure it with a twist on the inside, and then you have to work the two outer tabs kind of in and out. And it's a little tricky doing it that way, and you have to kind of flex things out of shape, kind of like with the other joints, to get it to work. But it's a fairly straightforward connection. It's not as difficult to do with some of the other connections, like C-3PO has a elbow arm piece that was a little challenging to get right, and Iron Man had some challenging joints to get to work. But these are pretty straightforward. It's the same thing with the elbows and the same thing with the knees, and it's really simple to understand. And while it's a bit challenging to get some of the tabs in, it's really, all in all, not as difficult as some of the other things that I've seen done. I've run into a number of situations where I got the tabs connected and then I had to kind of go back and re-manipulate the part. I ran into that with the feet. Once I got all the tabs of the feet connected and got it connected to the bottom of the leg, when it came time to put it to the base, I had to kind of reshape things a little bit, squeeze it, and kind of elongate it a little bit to make it fit. With the arms were probably more challenging than the legs, and with the elbows and the shoulders, after I got all of those strips, there's several different strips you fold over, and once I got them connected, it took me some time to shape it back out into more of a round shape. You end up with this really slender kind of oval shape, and I had to stretch and squeeze and push it back out to get the other connections to work. So there's a number of situations where you're flexing things a certain way to get the tabs connected in their slots, but then you got to go back and kind of reshape things when you're done. That's not such a bad thing. It works, and it's happened in other models, but it happens a lot in this particular model. When I started putting the body pieces together, it's kind of hard to see, but these side pieces, I originally tried to fold them way down, almost flat, almost a right angle, and that was the wrong way to do it. You see, it's kind of hard to see, but they kind of tilt down a little bit, but not that much. And at first it seems like it wants to go one way, but it kind of goes another. And if you watch my build video, you see what I mean. I kind of got a little overexcited thinking they kind of floated down and bent over, and they don't. They stay out pretty much straight, just a little slight angle to it, and the body kind of comes in a little bit. You got the sides that come and curve and connect to each other. I feel like I bent them in a little too far, but by the time I got to the point of realizing that, hey, maybe these should be flexed out a little bit, it was a little too late to kind of flex them back out. There's one part in there where you've got an attention point, and it's telling you when you're putting this sword handle on the rest of the sword that one middle tab has to face forward. And the reason that is if you don't put it on quite right, the upper tabs will not be lined up right, and this little emblem, your final piece that you put on this emblem, will sit sideways or angled, and it won't look right. So that's the one attention point that I noticed in there. Make sure you get, when you're putting this handle onto the rest of the sword, the center tab is facing towards the front, facing to one side, and the other two tabs are kind of angled at the back. Attaching the hand to the arm was literally a stretch. I shaped the hand, the first hand, and then I went to attach it, and you've got one tab this way and one tab that way, and I had to open the hand back up, warp it out of shape, get the two tabs over, or two slots over their tabs, and then pinch and squeeze and shape everything back together. When I went to do the second hand, I didn't even connect one side all the way. I left one side partially open so that I'm going to have to flex it back open anyway to get the tabs connected, and then I finished closing it around the end of the hand, or end of the arm. That worked okay, but either way, they're fairly flexible hands, so it's not that hard to do. But yeah, the hands are literally a tight squeeze. You have to fold them out and stretch them out to get them into their spot. And then once both of the arms are on, you have to work them back together so that the hands are kind of one's over the other, and you have a roundish opening that the handle of the sword can go up into. When I first opened this model up, when I first opened the package and looked at the sheets, I saw really big parts. I was very excited. I thought, this thing will probably come together fairly quickly, because you've got so many large pieces putting it together. You're not going to spend a lot of time with tiny little details, folding and shaping them and adding them. When the reality is, even though it's large pieces, you spend a lot of time getting the shapes of the arms and legs and the body just right. So still, this took 2.5 hours to complete, which I guess for an ICONX model is not all of that bad. 2.5 hours was a nice amount of time. It felt like it took every bit of that 2.5 hours. I wouldn't have been surprised if I did my calculations and found out that I spent 3 hours building it. But it was an engaging 2.5 hours, and it wasn't a boring or frustrating 2.5 hours. It was a very engaging, very thought-provoking 2.5 hours of manipulating and shaping and trying to get things to fit together, and it's such a wonderful model that is well worth every effort. However, I will admit, and I'm not counting this in the 2.5 hours, I will admit that halfway through the build I stopped and had a little fun. A lot of people have looked at this model, and the first thing they thought was Monty Python. 'Tis but a scratch. I'm invincible! If you're not familiar with Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's been a very long time since I've actually seen the movie all the way through, but I know that there is one scene where you have a knight dressed in similar garb minus the cape, but it's all black, and he's basically won't let anyone pass. And there's a fight. He's stubborn and refuses to stand down. He loses an arm. He continues to try and fight. He loses another arm. He continues to try and fight. He loses a leg. He continues to try and fight. He loses another leg. Still wants to fight, even though he's a stump on the ground and really can't move around, and the guy's right off. But it's a funny scene if you like Monty Python, and I took a moment in the middle of this build, since I was to the point of having the body together, don't have the arms, I don't have the cape. I ran to Walmart, and I got a scrap piece of fabric, black fabric, and cut a piece out, a little cutout for the head, draped it over it, and got a piece of black string, dipped it in some, a piece of string, it was white string, I dipped it in some black paint and let it dry, tied that around the waist so you had that similar black cloth around its body, and I found a JPEG of the emblem on the Black Knight's chest, printed it out, very small print, glued it to the front, and with my 3D printer I actually took and loaded some red filament and extruded a few strands and kind of stuck it through the body so you had strands sticking out either side as if to indicate it was squirting blood, and took a quick little picture. It was fun. A lot of people really liked it. I had to do it. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people were saying the same thing. They were thinking of that particular night. I'm surprised no one beat me to mimicking the Black Knight. And one of these days, when I'm done building all of the Metal Earth models and ICONX models and P-School models and Tenyo and all of the MU models, I will buy another Black Knight. I'll buy another Templar Knight. I will build him without the cape, paint him completely black, maybe take the arms, put magnets in them so they're removable, and I will recreate the Black Knight. But until that day, we have this wonderful ICONX Templar Knight, and what a beautiful, beautiful caped figure this is. And one other interesting little mistake that I made, I almost forgot about this, but sometimes one of the things I've noticed with the Metal Earth models is sometimes with connections you have, like if this piece connects to that piece, you may have an outline of that piece that connects on the other piece. For instance, in the helmet, there's a piece in the center that has a piece that connects to the bottom that basically makes up its neck. And that round piece inside has an outline of the piece that's basically the neck. And my thought process was to connect that neck piece on top of that outline. And that was the wrong way to do it. You're actually supposed to attach it to the other side, the non-engraved side. And I missed that. And I've noticed that sometimes that rule flip-flops back and forth with different builds. You may have a thruster that goes on a shuttle that in one instance you would attach that thruster on the engraved circle on the part where it belongs. But there are other times where you would attach the thruster on the other side of where that engraving is for everything to line up. And there doesn't seem to be a solid rule about which way to go. It really varies per model, and I assumed and guessed wrong and had to take this part back out of the center and take that neck piece off, flip it to the other side. And that's another instance where you definitely have to pay attention to the instructions, because it did say non-engraved side or engraved side facing this way, and I didn't see it and I assumed, and that was a mistake. And that is one of the things that I would do differently. It's definitely, on the box it has it listed pretty much as a medium. I agree, it's very much a medium model. If you've got some experience, this will just be another interesting and fun challenge for you. If you're new to Metal Earth building, still, it's going to be an interesting and fun challenge. Maybe a little bit more difficult for you, but for the most part, this is not such, honestly, for an ICONX model, this isn't a bad one to start off with. Not too bad at all. Don't know that I would completely recommend starting with this model. Careful now. But if you were to start with it, it wouldn't be a terrible choice. There's certainly worse ICONX models or Metal Earth models that you could start with. And one of the things I ask myself at the end of a build is, what would I do differently? Well, there's not a lot of things. Paying more attention to the instructions so that I didn't get the neck piece connected to the round bit inside of the head backwards. supposed to engrave, attach the neck piece to the non-engraved side. I attached it to the engraved side, and then there's an offset hole that wouldn't line up. So paying more attention to that and putting that on properly is one thing I would do differently. Another thing would be this belt. The two belts that you can barely see under here actually have tabs or slots in them with tabs on the body to help align them. And I didn't notice that at first. Put the belts on, pulled them through, and folded them over. Then realized there's tabs and slots that should have been connected. I was able to finagle them into place, but it would have been nice to just put the belts around those slots, tighten them down, and then have them held in place while I worked on the buckle. So there's a couple of things that I would have definitely done a little differently if I had this to do all over again. And that pretty much wraps up this review. I look forward to building some other armor models. So far I've only built a couple of armor models. There's some Metal Earth models, Japanese armor and European knight armor that I haven't gotten to yet. So I look forward to hopefully getting those soon and putting those together. This has been a lot of fun, and I certainly recommend this. If you're into armor, definitely give this one a shot. It stands nice and tall and will look wonderful on your shelf. I do want to thank my Patreon supporters, as usual, for supporting this channel, supporting these build videos, review videos, and news videos. Thank you very much for your support. If you enjoy these videos, consider becoming a Patreon supporter, giving a little bit to help keep these videos coming. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your interaction. Feel free to leave comments in the comment section down below, any questions and whatnot. And as always, thank you for watching, and keep on keeping on.